And then these are just some typical monitoring temperatures and parameters. So for boilers, anything above a 75 brake horsepower boiler size is going to be on an EMS. Anything smaller, it's not worth it. It's too small to monitor. Okay, that may be one of those ponies that we were talking about, or supplemental. Same thing with chillers. Anything below a 200-ton chiller, I'm going to operate at optimum level. So it's going to run on a regular basis. So I'm going to pick and choose when I want to put on an EMS system. Okay, I have that opportunity. Okay. Fire protection systems now, as we change gears again, is everybody knows it, sprinkler systems, right? Sprinkler heads, piping, and so on. You've seen it. How does the water smell in a sprinkler system? Why? Yeah, it's not cycled, right? I don't want that sprinkler water to turn on, right? Because what does it mean when it turns on? What do I have? I'm going to have a fire. I don't want no fires, right? So I want that sprinkler water to stay in that pipe as long as possible. But does that require maintenance? Absolutely. Okay, so we're going to cover some of those. Fire protection systems play a vital and critical role in providing life safety for building occupants, assets, capital, infrastructure, and of course the shareholders. Okay? So the basic fire protection principles are elements for basic fire protection can be broken down into two categories. Remember these two. One's going to be a passive and one's going to be an active fire protection system. Okay, we're going to cover those. All right. A passive controls the ignition, growth, and spread of fire through the use of fire resistance materials. So if I look at this wall right here, is this going to be considered passive? If I had a fire on the other side of the corridor, and I don't like to talk that way, but anyways, this is a class, right? That wall is going to give me what? An opportunity to do what? Yeah, evacuate, right? And if I look down this hallway out here to the front room, I got fire walls and fire corridors, right? Is that door considered passive? Sure, right? I can close that door. If you notice, he's holding this in, and I don't think it's asbestos. It's probably some sort of newer fire retardant material, right? But you notice he's got his hands, there's a flame over here. So again, what you're doing is you're buying time to evacuate the building, okay? So anything resistive. How about this chair? The material on this chair. Okay. Yeah. By code, by law, right? All the materials, the carpeting, everything you've got in this room is going to have some sort of passive. Now, you can burn anything. You can burn metal if you get it hot enough. But for the most part, tables, chairs, everything in here is going to be considered a passive. It's going to minimize the level where it ignites, right? Because remember, most items that kill people in a building that's burning, it's not the heat or the fire. It's the smoke, right? From this chair burning up, the carpeting burning up. Just overcome what? With fumes, okay? Now, passive fire protection systems are tended to provide the following. Provide structural integrity of the floor. World Trade Center. Reports. Have anybody read the reports on the World Trade Center? What happened? It was a tragic, absolutely tragic, horrific. Never. When they built the Trade Center, the buildings and the structural elements within that building, because it was built out of steel, were designed for a standard fire. When you get jet fuel and the rate that it burns, it was enough to what? Melt and collapse. And then where they hit it to, you had the top weight. And then, of course, once you collapsed it, it created a chain reaction all the way down. Again, it was a terrible, tragic, okay, event. So again, provides a structural integrity. So how do you do that, my construction? How do you guarantee the integrity, or at least maximize the integrity of your structure? What do you do with it? Do you spray anything on it?
Sure. We did.
Yeah.
You just did design walls for the system.
Right. You have fire retardant materials that you sprayed on beams, and it's part of the code. It's going to be a requirement before you button up the building and put the ceiling tiles in, right? Compartmentalize the room and space to control the spread of fire. In some cases, you're going to have 30-minute, 1 hour, 2 hour, depending on the occupancy, right? And it's going to be baked right into your construction specs. Provide exiting systems for occupants to safely evacuate the building. So exit signs, You know, that always gets me. I always look for exit signs. There's no exit signs in this building. I bet you the new building's going to have them. No. Built before, not required. And with that, you've got just smoke detectors, and that's what they're relying on evacuation for the building. Now, do they have fire or evacuation drills, John, on this building? Once in a while? Sometimes? I know you're on tape, but you should have it, you know, once a year, right? Evacuation procedures. At 5 o'clock? Really? Okay. Yeah, typically, though, but it's going to be considered passive, right? Okay. And again, we talked about this, smoke versus the actual flames, okay, the cause of fatalities. One solution is to minimize the use of furnishings and construction materials that produce that. So that's why in codes, right, and building codes, you're restricted on what type of materials you can build the building out of. Okay, those are going to be baked right into the specs. Now, active, opposite from passive. Active is something that's going to actually what? Minimize the spread of the fire, right? So it takes direct physical action to reduce the growth rate of the fire or the migration of smoke. So you ever notice in Hollywood the sprinklers come on and all the sprinklers turn on in the building, right? That's not necessarily true, okay? But some, and we'll go over some of the different types of fire protection systems, some do. They call those a deluge system. And depending on the rating, maybe it's a chemical storage facility where it's, you know, if you have a fire and it's some bad news, a munitions factory. You actually end the sprinklers, yes. Yep.
And they're rated
at different temperatures, okay? So again, some sort of physical action, water, some sort of valve, right? Some sort of evacuation system. Fire sprinklers and smoke control systems that receive signals alert occupants. Again, it's an active. Okay, there's an action and there's a reaction to that. Okay. Now here's one considered hydrant. Hydrant is what? It's an active. I can turn on the PIV valve on top and open up the hydrant caps, hook up my fire hose to it or my fire pump if it's a high rise, right? It's an active system. My fire risers in this building, I don't know where they're at, but in this building, fire risers, those can be considered active. Sprinkler systems, evacuation, annunciation horns, active systems, right? Okay. So notification systems, immediate reliable detection of fire and smoke is essential. So PM's critical. Regular evacuations, regular testing. Okay. As I mentioned before, a lot of renovations, a lot of tenant improvements in your building, at any time someone can accidentally cut a fire evacuation line. And typically, what is a fire evacuation line's color? Yeah, typically red. So if you see any red cabling above the ceiling, do not cut that. Okay. You can cut the black stuff, but don't cut the red stuff, right? Okay. No, you don't want to cut anything. If detection is delayed, passive egress can be blocked. We just had another, about every 6 months, unfortunately, you hear in the news of a horrific fire that spread to a nightclub or hotel, a ship, okay? And those are, the what? Yeah, the one in Brazil, and it wasn't too long ago. And they still happen. And the question is, why? Well, again, occupancy and how fast they can get to that egress before it's blocked. Because once you get 100 people trying to get to that door, good luck, right? And if it's a thing where you want to wait out, then the panic sets in. There's no other doors, right? Okay. Since most buildings and parts of buildings are vacant at some time, automatic fire detection is usually required. So I'm protected. Okay. I'm protected. The worst thing you can do is come home and your house is burnt down. Right? And you ask your neighbors, hey, how come you didn't call me? I said, well, I didn't think your house was on fire. Like, oh, this is great, right? So on your home, if you have alarm, Cox offers them. Smoke detectors will notify the fire department. Now, I guess I would pay the $75 fine to have the fire department roll up with a false alarm than to show them to find my house burnt down. But there's 2 freebies, okay. All right. Fire detection system components. Okay. Now, there's 2. There's fire systems and fire detection. There's 2 different sets of components. These are the typicals. Okay, what you're going to see in most buildings are going to be speakers, horns, bells, lights. Again, why would you have strobes in a building? Yeah, right, for ADA requirements. Absolutely. Good. Thanks, Paul. Okay. Smoke detectors, duct detectors. So I have my fire dampers and my fire doors. Are they passive or active? Okay, some may have a dual role, but primarily going to be active, right? Now, do I have maintenance requirements to make sure that my air handlers shut down at the first once I got smoke? Sure. They're going to go through an infrared, right? So you can do the old smoke test. And with that, it should shut down the air handler and shut all the fire dampers to that distribution. I don't want to spread the smoke. Why? Because I want to give the folks enough time to evacuate without causing panic. Okay. Controllers, okay. Others would be your wiring mechanisms, right? Again, we just talked about HVAC connections to your air handlers, right? And then here's the typical alarm with the annunciation horn and the strobe on it as well. Okay. And fire detection systems, it is a system. You go from your main computer and annunciation system, which is your main panel, typically up front of the building next to security. So they'll monitor the fire protection as well as your security systems. Yep. So from that, you got power in, you got the annunciator panels where you can send out what a PA, public address. This is just a test, do not evacuate, whatever the case is. Or this is a real emergency, please evacuate the building. Okay. And then from there, you get into local panels. That's the one local panel I had to upgrade in that example I gave to you earlier in class. Okay, you got your smoke detectors, right? You got your exhaust fans. The World Trade Center, going back, a gentleman, Frank Brzezinski, was the security director for the World Trade Center. He spent years and years analyzing what could be a deficiency in the building. One was the evacuation routes. So he lobbied with the New York Port authorities to install large evacuation fans in the stairwells for smoke. All they are is big smoke evacuation. They turned on, unfortunately, when the building was compromised. Saved a lot of lives. He lost his life in that, going back in and helping people. But without that, though, without his determination and commitment, we might have had more fatalities than, unfortunately, what we had. But again, those would be included from within that fire detection system, so that you can consider this an active system. It's ready to go at a moment's notice. Monitoring system, where you call the fire, separate line, analog line going out. You don't use your interior lines. Separate line going out into the local fire department or 911. Okay, separate line. Okay. Then here's some typical equipment. Fire riser, right? Jockey pump, booster pump, some cases high rise. Backflow detectors. Okay. Notice what these two guys are. They're tamper switches. Yeah. So anytime anybody comes up here to try to turn the valve off, it's going to signal back to your annunciation panel that somebody is tampering with your system. You don't want those shut off. So typically, they'll chain them completely wide open. Okay. Some things to test for are the locks. Okay. The locks are breakaway locks. Breakaway locks are meant to be broken easily, but depending on how you hit it, best thing to do is have keys available, okay, to access the lock, okay? Now, this is a typical fire riser. You got your, again, tamper, you got your valves, pressure inlet, outlet, you got your gong, right? This is a whole system, whole component system. What do you think's in that little red box?
Spare parts and a wrench.
Yeah. Spare sprinkler heads, probably some wood wedges, okay, and a spanner wrench, okay, to remove the head, to replace it. And most typically, you'll have a fire protection system like a Metro Fire or JCI that will come in and perform the tests for you. But these are tested on, in our case, on a quarterly basis. You run your inspector test valve, so you're flowing water through what? Your cell switches and your gongs and your flow switches. What you want to do is that alarm go back to the central panel, letting security know I got flow. What you don't want to see is flow and heat at the same time. That's the facility manager's nightmare. I can see flow. Okay, water's cool. But if I get heat along with that flow, and I got smoke detectors that are going off, that's a scary thought. Okay, I don't want to go there. Okay, because again, you don't know how bad it's going to be or how it is. But again, backflow preventers regularly tested on a regular basis. Tamper switches tested. Booster pumps tested. Okay, maintained on a regular basis. Fire suppression systems, main items contain the fire or eliminate the fire. So if this room, that corner caught on fire, the sprinkler systems, and that, if it had sprinklers, right, would probably activate. But depending on what I had in this room, say for instance I had highly flammable chemicals in this room, even though I'm taking care of the fire over there, I don't want the heat to compromise the rest of the materials, right? So in that case here, I'm going to change the design of the fire protection system. Now I'm going to install a deluge system, just like in the movies. If that sprinkler turns on, guess what? I'm saturating all my material. I'm minimizing what? The spread of fire and also the level of damage, catastrophe, right? Okay.
I'm not so sure that the bird's nest actually can affect that sprinkler head going off.
Did anybody notice that? Anybody notice that, right? Little hummingbird nest on top of the sprinkler head?
I don't think it's really going to matter.
Probably not. No, probably. Yeah.
Only when the water goes.
Yeah.
The water goes up, but the heat elements go down.
There's that fusible link you were talking about right there. Okay. And this one here is probably in some sort of loading dock exterior.
Yeah,
More likely. Yeah.
protecting the roof system.
Yeah. Okay. So fire suppression systems components, again, piping, control valves, jockey pumps. Air compressors. We're going to talk about air compressing in a minute here. Why you would need compressed air on a fire protection system. Right? Backflow preventers, we looked at that. Strainers. Okay. Indicators. Gauges would be included in this, along with control valves. Okay. Typical components. Now these are the typical types of suppression systems. Now these are going to require maintenance, right down to the hose. You unreel the hose, right? Once a year, you check for damages. If it's exposed hose to the sun, you look for rot, any type of sun damage or oxidation on the hose. Leaks. Nothing worse than going up on your roof, squirting water, and you only get a little squirt coming out of it because the hose is leaking more than the end of the nozzle, right? You see that in cartoons sometimes. Fire extinguishers, regular maintenance. Part of code, part of requirements. Insurance carriers require that, right? Okay. So chemical systems, now it's dry chemicals. Okay, they're going away from halon and going to the 2000 series, right? You got wet pipe, dry pipe, and pre-action. So we'll take a couple look at those. Wet pipe systems, typically what you're going to see in a regular building. Part of your maintenance requirements is to exercise. Again, what you want to make sure is that flow sensor operates and it sends a signal. That's what you're doing. So when you exercise, the inspectors test, and you hear the alarm, and you get the message that it's flowing back at the enunciator panel, that means the systems are working, right? Okay. What this does is once the fusible link lets off, it allows immediately the release of water, because why? It's pressurized. So if you're taking a ladder and you hit that sprinkler head and knock it off, what happens? You get water, right? So the first thing you do is you look for that 55-gallon drum, and you wheel it over there as fast as you can. But by the time you get there, okay, and that may be 2 stories down, but yes, you go there, I'll get the 55-gallon drum, right? And then the fire protection system has a lot of water in it, because you're talking 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch, the entire infrastructure. So if you're in the first level and you've got 4 stories above you, is that water going to drain? It's going to be a while, isn't it? Okay. So again, that's why you've got your wedges, right, and you got your wrenches and so on. But typically, on those particular ones for facilities, is responding to that. Fire risers are the first things you go to. Okay. Sprinkler water, when it's coming down on you, it's extremely cold for one. Okay. It's messy for that. It has a lot of oils, contaminants from within the pipe. But not only that, but trying to hit that wedge when you're getting drenched with water. Because again, you'll hit that wedge to what? Shut off that valve, right, on that sprinkler head. Okay. But it's not that easy. Okay. So trust me, you will be wet. So wet pipe system. They're ready to go. Pressurized. Once it sets off the fusible link or a ladder, okay, you're ready to go and you're exercising it. Next one is a dry pipe system. Primarily where you got freezing conditions. And there's a dry pipe system, single stage and 2-stage. Data centers, anything that has electrical components, electrical bolts, may have a 2-stage. On this particular one, it's a dry pipe system, and what they say is that this is not, it doesn't have any water, it has compressed air. So once they install it, they pressurize the line. They may pump in 80, 100. If I got 90 pounds coming in, I'll run 110, 120 pounds of air pressure in that pipe. Why I want to keep that flapper valve shut. There's a flapper valve in here. However, once my fusible link goes off because of heat and it melts, what happens to my air? It escapes, right? Okay. Flapper opens. Now I've pressurized the line. Now I've got water movement, right, going through that. On a data center, you may have a two-stage to where, one, you exercise this, you fill it, but before this operates, you want heat. So it's a two-stage system. Before I flow water and accidentally drench all my servers and my UPSs.
So if there's monitors in where the head is?
There's monitors in the room. So you've got two alarms. You've got two signals. One's got to be heat at a certain temperature. Right. That way, if you got the gentleman that goes through and he hits the sprinkler with the ladder, I evacuate the air, but it doesn't set my flapper off. So it gives me that margin of safety. Okay, different type of systems. But maintenance, you're going to require regular maintenance, inspections of piping systems and air handlers. On that particular run, you run temperatures. And that one there, you actually use a heater to make sure that yeah, to make sure. Okay, make sure. Okay. Then they got a pre-action system, which is considered a deluge system. Okay, and this particular one is all my heads are active and live. All I got to do is flow water. Again, depending on the application. In some cases, you may be constructing a chemical building or a high hazardous, H1 or H2 building. Those particular ones, the entire fire protection system's live, and the first indication of a fire or heat or any type of compromise to the building, okay, the entire system now is active, and there's your compressed air. Okay, so once again, you've got a flapper valve. So the difference between this and the other systems that we looked at is that all the sprinkler heads will operate. So you're saturating your materials, you're saturating everything with water so you don't spread fire, and of course the hazard to that. So different types of fire protection, suppression systems that all require maintenance. Now, does facilities perform the maintenance? We don't perform the maintenance. We'll usually farm that out to a reputable fire protection agency. But for you construction folks, though, this is part of your project, installing the suppression system. So you're going to put in the loop, you're going to tie in your riser. If it's a jockey pump or if it's a booster pump, you're going to tie all that in, you're going to test it, you're going to commission it, and guess what? You're going to turn over the maintenance plans, okay, over to the facilities management team. Okay. And again, maintenance is good as a design like anything else. Passive systems do not have the same testing and inspection requirements because, again, a passive system, once I build the wall, very seldom I'm going to tear the wall down every year. But if I have a hole, right, in a firewall, the inspector runs by, he'll probably write me up for that hole. I got to patch it with the same rating, right? Okay, so that's going to require regular inspections and maintenance, okay? Once the passive system is installed, typically inspected and accepted by the building official, okay, and the occupancy certificate of occupancy is issued, the system is generally not inspected unless changes or damages. Okay, say for instance I had a fire. I will check the integrity of the wall. Okay. A systematic approach to the fire alarm system should include the following components: inspection, testing, maintenance management, put in a regular PM, and operational considerations. When you're going to operate. The evacuation. There's a lot of debate on when you evacuate a building that holds 4,000 people. Some people argue, why do you want to do it during regular working hours? So you just want to test the alarms. But in some cases, per code and by law, you have to do it with the occupants so they know exactly which routes they got to go. Okay. If it's secondary maintenance, you can just run the strobes on a Saturday and run your enunciations on a Saturday. Make sure the systems work without the actual evacuation. Okay. 3 elements of a sound security system are switching gears from fire suppression to security. Again, it's all part of maintenance, folks. So security, you got gates, barriers, and so on. This will go pretty fast. Policies, procedures. Typically gates, fences, access control, right? Intrusion detection, monitoring, surveillance. Again, part of your maintenance plan. On the CMMS systems, you're going to have from A to Z on everything that you're monitoring for maintenance. So I'm asking you folks, have I scared you in facilities yet? There's a lot in a facilities organization. And just on the maintenance part, not the construction or the project management or finance. This is just the maintenance component, right? Okay. And again, access control systems, monitoring elevators, parking garages, cameras, right? Lighting controls. Okay. Different types of scanners, magnetic strips, typically depending on the level of security for the building, right? proximity scanners, you got your fingerprints, retinal scanners for your eyes and so on. Okay. But again, all these devices are going to require periodic maintenance, okay, for log in, log out. Okay. And then the last 2 slides is just tours. We talked about that earlier in class. Identify the inspections of your equipment. What's the condition, right? And quality control plans, along with those inspections, is what's the level of the maintenance quality. Okay, you need to determine that. We had some examples with the central plant tour. And then, of course, the most important one is reporting the results. Catalog, report results, come up with an action plan.